Good. Well, welcome to Israel. Everybody has their passports. They're all valid, right? Well, this is as close to Israel as you're going to get these days, right? All the stuff that's going on. I keep track of, was it Amir Safardi? I think that's how you pronounced it. And he's got updates going on all day long. And it's just, it's amazing what's going on over there, and I wouldn't want to be traveling over there now. I did have the honor of traveling to Israel back in 2011, and I went with this gentleman, John Ferret, and his wife. John had been over there, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 times prior. He knew the land back and forth, and it was just absolutely wonderful. Three of us took a car. We drove everywhere we went. So we were able to go at our pace, and we spent 3 weeks over there. We were recording 5 to 7 minute videos from each of a number of different sites that was going to go up on his website back then. An amazing man. If you want to learn the Jewish roots of our Christian faith, check out lightofmenorah.org. Lightofmenorah.org. And he's got more things on there than you can begin to even comprehend. And he's very thorough. He's very demanding in his studies, and does an excellent job of presenting information. Okay. Question: which is better, black and white TV or color?
Color.
Color. Is that for me? Oh, I guess not. All right. Color, obviously. And the same thing happens with the Bible. The Bible can be read in black and white, just the plain text as we have it, or you can turn it into full color, full living color. Now, I take the Bible as being like a letter that you find between two people that you don't know. You maybe have some hints as to where they're coming from, but you don't really know them. But as soon as you ferret out what they are about, what they believe, where they're at, then you can start to understand what that letter means. And here's an example. It says, "Dear love, let me start by saying that I thank God every night since I found you. And you came into my life when everything seemed dark, but you provided the light to find my way. I love you." Now, what do you know about the person that wrote that? Not much. We do know they must have some kind of a spiritual relationship with God, because she or he references that in there. We don't even know if it's a he or a she. We don't know who it was written to. And that's the way it is in the Bible. But fortunately, over the years, with study, we've been able to colorize the background of the Bible. And so I say, never forget. Repeat that. Never forget. Context, context, context. Yes. Okay, I'll only give you an example. You can take a single verse and you can make a whole theology out of it if you really want to. But the Bible, the love letter of the Bible, is not written that way. You need to look at the verses before and after to get a better context. Then you need to read the rest of the chapter to get a better context. And then the rest of the book. As an example, Pastor Pat has been going through 1 Peter. If you were to take just one or two verses, it wouldn't be in context. But when you look at the whole book, it just, a whole picture develops. And then you can't stop the context there. You should read the rest of the Testament that book is in, and then, of course, the rest of the Bible. And when you do that, you'll have a good start to context. We need to not only look at ancient Israel, but we need to look at Asia Minor, we need to look at Egypt, we need to look at the surrounding areas for certain things. And here are those certain things. Number one is archaeology. The Bible is backed up by archaeology time after time after time. And that will tell us things that you wouldn't know otherwise. Likewise, we need to look at history outside of Israel. Look at the history of Israel, but look at the history of Egypt and Rome and so forth. Then we need to look at geography. Geography is very, very important, and we're going to look at a lot of geography tonight. And then you also need to look up the customs and the culture. And when you study those other areas along with the text, now you can make that love letter from God just come alive. And that's one of the things that John Ferret does so well. A verse that we've got for this week is from Deuteronomy 1:8. And it says, "Look, I have given you this land. Now go in and take it." Who is he writing to?
The Israelites.
The Israelites, yeah. He goes on to say, "It's the land God promised to give your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their children after them." This land, okay? So the question is, why this land that Israel turned into versus any other land? What's so unique about this land? And that's what we want to look at tonight, is that land. And it's called the land in between. So here's a map with, can you see the mouse on there? Huh? Can't see the mouse? Oh. Well, okay. Well, you see Turkey in the upper. It's there now. Now it's not there. Now it is? All right. You've got Turkey. You've got Iraq, which is all part of Asia Minor. You've got Egypt down in the lower left-hand corner. And then you've got this strip of land in between, right there. And that's where Israel is located. That is this land that God referred to. Now, one of the unique features about this, if you go out to the west, what do you hit? Lots of water. Now, you can travel the water by boat. That's not a problem. Or sometimes it can when you've got storms, but it's an impediment. How about to the east? What's out to the east? Desert. Very hot desert, hard to go through. Okay. You then have to the north all these countries of Asia Minor and going up to what's now Europe, and just loaded with people that need to buy and sell goods. And then down to the south, you've got Egypt and the lands of Africa and so forth. and they want to trade up to the north. So you've got people wanting to go from north to south, south to north, and where did God put Israel? Right in the middle. They had to go through Israel to get where they were going. Okay? Very, very important. All right, here's a overall view of the land of Israel. And we've got the Mediterranean Sea out to the west. We've got Israel itself. We've got Egypt down to the south. We've got the Jordan, country of Jordan to the east. We've got Syria in the upper right, and we've got Lebanon. So that's where a lot of this takes place. We have the Sea of Galilee, and very, very critical that the Sea of Galilee is right where it is, and we'll show you that in a minute. And then, of course, we've got the Dead Sea and Jerusalem down about a little bit halfway or past the halfway mark going down. So tonight we're going to start out with the geography of the Dead Sea area. If you look at the Dead Sea, it's about 56 miles north to south, and going from east to west, it's between 8 and 10 miles. And then you've got Jerusalem off to the north end and the left. So whenever you want to find Jerusalem on a map of Israel, look for the Dead Sea, and then go almost straight west from the north, and you'll find Jerusalem. Just 5 miles south is the town of Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. And then, of course, you've got the Jordan River that comes down south from the Sea of Galilee, empties into the Dead Sea. Now, why do they call it the Dead Sea? Yeah, it's dead. There's no life in there. It's just, salt water. I wasn't brave enough to jump in, but John did, and he said it was so easy to float. It was just amazing. I didn't want all that salt on me. And let's go back here one click if I can. Yeah, I guess I'm not. Where that arrow came down, that's the area where John the Baptizer did his baptizing. If you look at the geography, and we will in a second here, up along the western bank of the Dead Sea, it's a fairly high level to come down. And then, of course, to the south, we've got the Negev. And we're going to start out here at a place called Ein Gedi. John and Robin and I stayed at Ein Gedi one night, and very glad that we did. There's a very famous spring at Ein Gedi, which David used to hide from King Saul. That's 1 Samuel 24:1. If you look at the elevation, you'll see Ein Gedi with the arrow, and the Dead Sea is 1,348 feet below sea level. It's quite a drop. And then if you go on, you go up to the top of the hill, it's 500 feet above sea level. So we're talking about 1,850 feet of rise between the Dead Sea and up above. The area has what we call wadis or nahals. It's a area that dips down, and those were used for transportation. In particular, this wadi out of Ein Gedi went up from the Dead Sea area You could go up to Nazareth, and you could go up to Jerusalem. And there's the path to do it. That was just the natural way to do it. Otherwise, you're climbing that 1,800 some feet. So a wadi was much, much easier to get up there. Here's a beautiful picture showing that difference in height. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? So going up the wadi, up to the upper levels, that's the only way to go. In En-Gedi was a youth hostel, and we stayed overnight there. And they have all kinds of groups that come in. And I'll never forget, at breakfast the next morning, here was a group of school children on tour with their teachers, and guess what the teachers were carrying? Sidearms. Every one of them had a sidearm. And this was for protection because they never know when they're going to be attacked, but the teachers were prepared. At the youth hostel, they had a model of Israel that was in the off to the side of the building, and I loved it because I love a visual picture, and this gave me a beautiful visual picture. So Israel is about 275 miles long, or that's what this model represented, and about 75 miles wide. If you were to put the layout of that model on a map of Minnesota, you can see Duluth up in the upper right-hand corner. The Twin Cities would be down about where Jerusalem is, and then you've got other points around there. So Israel is not big. Matter of fact, I heard once if jets were to come from the east to fly over Israel to bomb it, it would take just a matter of minutes to penetrate into Israel. So that's why they're always so up on their defenses. Okay, here's this model. We're at the north end now, and we're looking south. What do you observe? Anything right off the bat that sticks out to you?
Hilly.
It's hilly. That's good. Multiple structures of the geography. And which land was this? This was this land, the land that God gave to the Israelites. So, start to remember these. Off to the west, we've got the Mediterranean. Down to the south, we have Egypt. Off to the east, we have the country of Jordan. Up to the north and east, we've got Syria. And then the north and west, we've got Lebanon. And down to the south is the Negev. And we'll see pictures of the Negev. And it's amazingly rocky. Dry, rocky, yeah. Off to the right-hand side there of the picture, you've got the Gaza Strip, where all the bombing has been going on. You then have the coastal plain. Now, why do you think they call it the coastal plain? Say it's flat. Yeah, it's flat. It's easy to traverse, and it's right along the coast of the Mediterranean. Then we have what's called the Shephelah, and we'll show some other pictures later on, but the Shephelah is basically going uphill, and it's full of hills and valleys to get up there. Then we have the Central Ridge. That's that high part right down the middle. Jerusalem is about 3,000 feet above sea level of the Mediterranean. Then we have the wilderness. And why do you think they call it the wilderness? is. It's dry. It's rocky. There's nothing there. It is a wilderness. And we'll show you why in a second here. Then we have running from the north way down to the south, what's called the Rift Valley. This is actually an earthquake line. And earthquakes would take place along there according to God's timetable. Then we have what's called the Transjordan. So that's where you come up from the Rift Valley to Jordan, and that's called the Transjordan. Up at the very north, we have what's called the Hula Valley. Are you remembering all this? We'll put you to the test here. Just south of the Hula Valley, we've got the Sea of Galilee. That empties into the Jordan River. That empties into the Dead Sea. Off to the right side of your picture, we have the Carmel Range. It's not Mount Carmel. It's the Carmel Range. It's a series of mountain peaks. And then you've got the Upper Galilee. That's because there's lots of hills there. And then you've got the Lower Galilee. And then you've got Mount Hermon. And one of the unique features of Mount Hermon is that it gets lots of snow over the winter. And as it melts off the rest of the year, it provides a water source for Israel. God really created the land structure that the people would be dependent upon God for rain, for water, and for everything else. And then right next to the Mount Hermon, we've got the Golan Heights, and that's a very fascinating place. Okay, let's quiz here about the neighbors. What's off to the right there? Mediterranean. Okay. How about down there? Egypt. Good. And up this way? Say again? Lebanon, yes. And then over that way? Syria. And then to the east? Jordan. Well, you're paying attention. That's good. I love that. Okay. Going on again, we've got the Med. And then what's this area down next to the Med? Coastal plain. The Gaza Strip is down there, but that's the coastal plain. How about to the east of the coastal plain? What's that? Say it again. Shep, that's close. Shephelah. Say that. Shephelah. Okay. And then you've got this big high peak, and that's called what? The Central Ridge. And then off to the east of the Central Ridge, the Wilderness. And then you've got this long stretch, and what's that called? The Rift Valley. Okay. And then Transjordan, yes. You know, one of the interesting things is I haven't taught this class for a number of years. Boy, I had to go back and refresh my own mind. So if you don't get it right away, that's okay. All right, and then that big pond of water up to the north, Sea of Galilee. And then going out of the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River. And that empties down into the Dead Sea. And then what's way down to the south? The Negev. The Negev. Okay. And then somebody said this earlier. Where's that last arrow? What's that called? The Gaza Strip. And then that arrow, what's that? Upper Galilee. Okay. Lower Galilee. What's that valley? The Hula Valley. Hula, hula. And then we've got a plateau up there. What's that called? Golan Heights. And then we've got that last arrow on the, or next arrow on the, next to the Med. That's a range. Which range? Carmel Range. Anybody remember who ran along that Carmel Ridge? Yeah, that's where he was. It wasn't just a mountain peak. It was a long run, and I've been up there. And then to the very north, we've got Mount Hermon. Yes, very good. Oh, and then we've also got the Jezreel Valley. Lots of things happened in the Jezreel Valley, and we'll see pictures of that later on here tonight. Now, one of the unique things about Israel, we said that God placed it in between people to the north and people to the south. And there were many trade routes, but the main trade route was called the Via Maris. And it came over the Golan Heights, went down into the Hula Valley, went down through the lower Galilee, through the Jezreel Valley, and then down the coastal plain to Egypt, or vice versa, going north. Now, where's Jerusalem and all that? Is it near? No. Why?
It's not a very nice place to put a road.
No. In certain spots, yes. Get down to the coastal plain, it was nice. But why is it important that Jerusalem was not on the Via Maris? Yeah, keep God's people separate for temple purposes and so forth. Now, together with the King's Highway, the Via Maris was one of the major trade routes that connected Egypt to the south and the Levant, which is Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, with Anatolia, which is Turkey or Asia Minor to the north, and then Mesopotamia, which is Iraq a little bit farther to the east. The Via Maris was crossed by other trading routes, so the one could literally travel from Africa to Europe and from Asia to Africa through this narrow strip. Okay? Now, on the north end, what does the Via Maris go next to?
Syria.
Well, Syria way up to the north, but there's a puddle of water. What was that called? Sea of Galilee. And where did Jesus do most of his ministry? Around the Sea of Galilee, right on the Via Maris. So people traveling back and forth that didn't know the God of Abraham could get to know him through God's people. It's amazing, isn't it? This land, the land that God gave them with his purpose, his plan to reach the world at that time. Now here's a picture from looking from the Shephelah going down to the coastal plain. I don't particularly, it's not in depth enough for me, but it gives us the idea that you see all these hills and these valleys that go from up above down to the coastal plain. And there's the coastal plain down there. What do you think the purpose of all those hills and valleys in the Shephelah was?
Wells, towns.
Say again?
Towns and wells.
Towns and wells, true. The towns had a specific purpose, and what I'm getting at is they were defensive. You could easily attack somebody on the coastal plain, but now when you've got to go up through valleys and go uphill, it's much harder to attack and it's much easier to defend. Here's a beautiful picture of the coastal plain. There's a highway that runs right through it today. Tel Aviv is on the coastal plain. Big, huge city right next to the Mediterranean. And what a beautiful place to put a big city because it's flat and it's easy. Here you can see the coastal plain with the Shephelah in the distance. You see where it starts to go up. Here's another picture looking east up to Jerusalem from a town called Yad Hashmona. That was up in the Shephelah, and you can see how it goes up even farther to get up to Jerusalem, about 3,000 feet above sea level. Here's a satellite view of the Shephelah looking west to the coastal plain. You can see a little bit more clearly all those little valleys, and you can just try and imagine trying to attack Jerusalem through those valleys. Okay, do you remember the main areas? Another quiz. So, we're looking from the west to the east, but we're going to come from the east back to the west as we go through these. So what's over on the east? The what? Transjordan. Okay. And then you've got what next to it? Rift Valley. And then you've got the wilderness. Central Ridge. The Carmel Range. All those arrows. Shephelah. Okay. And then you've got what down there next to the Med? Coastal Plain. Very good. Okay. When you look at the Central Ridge, about where it gets to the Dead Sea, the 3,000 feet starts to go down and it eventually ends towards the southern end of the Dead Sea. And likewise, the Shephelah also ends. So you can travel across the Central Ridge, but it doesn't go on forever and ever. But they do both end down there. And then where the Shephelah and the Central Ridge ends, that's where the Negev starts. Who was famous for living in the Negev? David had some business down there. Who else? Going back farther. Ishmael, yeah, he was down there, but even farther back. The guy who started it all, Abraham. Remember, he loved that area down there. Okay, down in the Negev is a place called Ain Avdat. And you can see that Ain Avdat is a bunch of wilderness. But there is a kind of a valley that cuts through it. And you can see on the top, it comes down, goes down the valley there, and then it continues on out to the east. And it's just dirt, dirt, rock, rock, more dirt, and more rock. But hmm? Oh, but it does have a wadi that has some water, and because of that, you can see some green in that wadi. Now, when we were there, um, we kind of traveled a good chunk of that valley, and it was interesting. Up on the hills, we saw deer that were literally on cliffs. Just yeah. And the Bible talks about giving these deer hinds feet to keep their path, and we saw those down in that area. And then up at the top is a special area called Shan HaShavarot, and it's a desert lodging place. Great big huge tent, and you can literally stay there overnight. And they make food that you can eat, and you eat Bedouin style, literally laying on your side, laying on your elbow, and then picking off the table. It was quite the experience. I've never done that before. Here's a typical desert tent that you would see the Bedouins moving back and forth with. Not a whole lot to them, but they did the trick. And then here was a gal who was making bread over a hot round pan. She had a fire underneath it, and she would lay the mixture on top, and she'd make the bread, and oh, was that delicious. They had butter and they had honey, and oh, I loved it. All right, here's a picture of the desert floor in the Negev. Does that look exciting? Now,
Yeah.
can you imagine laying on that? Uh, Here's a close-up of that desert floor up to the northwest of the Dead Sea. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, here's the Israelites traveling from place to place out in the desert. And they would get to a location. What would they have to do? Clear out rock, unless you wanted a rocky place to sleep on. And yeah, it was just it was fascinating. There are wadis all over the area between the Central Ridge and the Mediterranean. I mean, they're just all over. And what's interesting is that the rainfall, the rain patterns are very unique to Israel. You've got real rainy places to the north, you've got desert to the south, and everything in between. And you'll notice most of that rain is over on the west side of the Central Ridge, and then you go to the east side of the Central Ridge down the Rift Valley, and it's that brown. But as you go north, it gets to be more and more green up there. Yeah, and then you get down into the Negev, and it is very, very, very dry down there. Yeah, Beersheba, that was the place where Abraham loved to go. Now you notice that Jerusalem is kind of right on the line between green and not green. And here is why that we have the rain patterns that we do. So now we're looking at Israel, that Israel model with the Mediterranean on the right, and what on the left? Jordan, okay? So the storms come in off of the Mediterranean. They get pushed uphill by the central ridge and the Shephelah. And as they do that, the rain dumps out. But once it gets up to the top, it's got to come down the other side, and it's pretty dry. And when it goes up the Transjordan, it'll release a little bit more water. Now, what's fascinating, as you go farther north, the Shephelah drops down, the central ridge drops down, just like it did to the south, and you get more rain to that area. And by the time you get into the Sea of Galilee, you get lots of rain. Okay, the wilderness, again, that is just rock and more rock, very, very dry. And as you go north, it gets greener. And I'll never forget that. We came up from Ein Avdat down, Ein Gedi down by the Dead Sea. We came up along the Jordan River. We then got to the south end of the Sea of Galilee, and I noticed it went from rock, and more rock to all of a sudden starting to get greener. And things just kind of bloomed as you got farther north. Here's a picture of the Judean wilderness just east of Jerusalem. Can you see all the grass? Say no. Can you see all the trees? Say no. It's just rock and more rock. Here's another picture. And again, and this is where David spent a lot of his time when he was being chased by Saul out in that Judean wilderness. They had caves there. He might have likely stayed in one of those caves. As you go north towards the Sea of Galilee, there's a place called Abel Mahola. Anybody know what that's famous for? There was a guy who that did farming, and God called him, and he killed off all his cattle and broke up the farming equipment. You said it earlier. Say again? Elisha, yes. And this was his home, was at Abel Mahola. He may have very well plowed what you see there, but you start to see grass there. And then once you get up around the Sea of Galilee, you see more and more green. You see trees, and it is the most beautiful area. And I'll never forget, as we pulled into the south end of the Sea of Galilee, and I've told some of you this, we had a distinct feeling of unrest coming up through the wilderness, the Rift Valley. But once we got to the south end of the Sea of Galilee, all of a sudden this peace just came over me. I can't explain it, but I was just peaceful. And all the time we were around the Sea of Galilee, it was that same way. And once we left to go down to the south again, farther to the west, all of a sudden that peace just lifted off. And so I told John and Robin as we were driving along, and he says, "Oh yeah, that happens to me every time that I go there." Just absolutely amazing. Okay, a little more quiz time. I want to make sure you remember these things. We're now looking from the west to the east, and north is going up to your left. What's this big area? Mount Hermon? Yep. And what's Mount Hermon famous for? Vasa, water from the snow, and that would melt and come down. All right. Then we've got this kind of a plateau area. Golan Heights. Okay. Then we've got this valley area. It's the Rift Valley, but to the north, it's called the Hula Valley. Remember that? Okay. And then we've got the Sea of Galilee. Can't forget that. And then what's right here? The Upper Galilee. Yep. And then down here, we've got the Lower Galilee. Yep. Here's a picture of Mount Hermon. And this was taken in, when did we go? June, July. Hot every place else in Israel, but you can still see snow up on the mountain. So the Jordan River starts at the base of Mount Hermon and goes down into the Hula Valley, which then empties into the Sea of Galilee, and then goes on down to the Dead Sea. Okay, we are on slide 59 of 64. Do you want to take a break or just keep going? Just keep going? Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break. Okay. So, life around the Galilee. Very fascinating here. Of course, we've got the Via Maris. And you see how that Via Maris follows right along the northwest edge of the Sea of Galilee. And where did Jesus spend most of his time? Right there. Okay. Up to the north is Caesarea Philippi. That's where Jesus asked his disciples, "Who am I?" Then you come a little bit farther south, and we have a place called Amrit, which is where it's believed that Paul was on his way to Damascus, and God came down and struck him and said, "Why are you persecuting me?" Then we've got a place called Gamla. We'll get to that one night, and that's a fascinating place. And the zealots that were very zealous for the way of the Jews held up there and fought off the Romans. And there's a big synagogue there that Jesus likely went to because it's just not far from what we call the Triangle Cities. We've got Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum. And then, going too fast here. What happened? All right, well, you had that first circle that came in. That was where the Beatitudes were given. And then you've got cities along the west shore of the Sea of Galilee, including Magdala. And then you've got a place called Mount Arbel. And that's actually one of the higher points around the Sea of Galilee. And I can't absolutely positively pinpoint that that was the place. But when you go up to the top of Mount Arbel, there's a beautiful set of rocks that kind of a semicircle shape that the disciples could have been sitting at, and Jesus could have been teaching them up there. And I strongly suspect that Jesus took his disciples up there right before he left, and he said, yeah, remember over here, and remember over there we did this, and remember over there we did that. I can't say for sure, but boy, you could, what a beautiful visual to go along with his teaching. Then, of course, you've got the Jordan River coming down. You've got the Jezreel Valley. And you've got Nazareth. There's where Nazareth was. Right off to the south end in the lower Galilee and to the north end of the Jezreel Valley. And we'll see more of that next week. And then not too far from there is Mount Tabor. And it's believed that that might be the place where Jesus had his transfiguration. And then you've got the Hill of Moriah. I mean, just all kinds of history there. On the east side of the Sea of Galilee, you've got the Decapolis. What does that mean? Decapolis. 10 cities, yep. And that was all pagan territory over there. And then you've got Tiberias. That was the seat of pagan rule for that area on the just south of Mount Arbel. And then you've got the abyss. Because of the way those storms would come over the hills, that Sea of Galilee could begin to churn quite a bit. And the stories where Jesus was in the boat with his disciples and he calmed the storm, that likely took place right there. You've got the story of the pigs and the feeding of the 4,000 over on the pagan side. And then on the other side, we went past it too quickly, was the place of the feeding of the 5,000. And then there's a city, there's a big tall hill, and on top of that hill is a city, and I believe that's where Jesus was saying, be a light on a hill. He was referencing that. It was one of the things that Jesus did often, was to take his surroundings and make good lessons out of them. So, any questions? We covered a lot. Got it all down, Pat?
No.
No.
I want.
Let's pray this recording works, and then it'll be online then. All right. A couple of questions here. What is unique about this land? What's unique about the north end?
High and wet.
High and wet. That's a source of water. Okay. How about the coastal plain? What's unique about the coastal plain? Agriculture. Yep. Easy to traverse. Okay. How about the central or the Shephelah? What's unique about those hills going up and all the valleys between them? Provided a good defense. How about the Central Ridge? What's unique about the Central Ridge?
Meteorologically, it is the point between rain and pretty much no rain.
True. The point between rain and no rain, what else? It was high, it was defensible. Okay, it made a great place for Jerusalem. East of the Central Ridge. What was unique about east of the Central Ridge? What did we call that? The Judean wilderness. What's unique about that? You had to be very dependent upon God to be there. Yep. And I believe it was, and Pastor, correct me if I'm wrong, for Yom Kippur, when they would have the scapegoat, all the sins would be laid on the scapegoat. They would take it out to the wilderness and kick it over the side. So it wasn't far from Jerusalem. How about to the south or the Negev? What's unique about that? Very dry, very, very much dependence is required on God to live down there. Okay? Now here's a question. Which of those parts do you relate to the most and why? Ooh, a little bit deeper here. Let's go back and, well, I can't go back, can I? No, I can't go back. The north, working on down the Shephelah coastal plain. What part do you relate most to? Be brave, we won't laugh.
Depends on what you're going through. There's times that you're in the wilderness for a long time.
Depends on what you're doing in life at the time. Yeah, it can be a wilderness. It can be very much growth, peace. It can be rock. Yeah, it's a good question to ponder.
But I do like the scripture verse, dig a well. Mm-hmm.
Say that again?
Dig a well.
Dig a well, yeah. So why did God give this land to his people with the desert to the east and the sea to the west? Why did he give that land or this land to his people?
The word would be carried north and south.
Yeah. As people are traveling back and forth along that Via Maris and along the King's Highway to the east on the Transjordan side, people would be given the opportunity to meet these strangers and do what? Witness about Jehovah God. Witness about what he had done in their life. Witness how they had come out of Egypt and been taken into this lush land. And that's why God did it. So now here's the last question. What Via Maris did God place you on? We're all on some kind of a Via Maris where people are traveling back and forth. What Via Maris did he place you on, and how effective have you been? And then with that, why or why not? Good questions, right? So for next week, chew on those questions, particularly this last one here. What Via Maris did God place you on? And how effective have you been? And why or why not?